Hey friends, this episode's going to be a little different. This podcast is called It's Time to Talk About It. And it's time for me to talk about an experience in my life in hopes of offering others encouragement during times of hurt and to remind people they are not alone. I'm sharing part of my story without a script. I don't have any notes written down. This is just me. My plan is not to edit this episode. This is real, authentic Maxetta. And I'm going to share with you my journey through 3 miscarriages. October is Infant Death and Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month. I've asked another friend of mine to share her story as well, so we'll hear it soon. And you'll find similarities, but you'll also find differences. Everybody's experience is different. So Chris and I got married in 1997. We knew when we got married that we didn't want to wait too long to start trying to have a family. I don't know why we were in such a hurry, but we were. And so shortly after we got married, we started trying for a baby. A few months after we had started trying, I woke up one morning and I couldn't hardly brush my teeth. I was gagging, I was sick. My body, certain parts of my body felt a little different. And I thought, oh my goodness, maybe I'm pregnant. So of course, I rushed to the store. I think Chris had already went to work. And I don't know why we do this, but I think a lot of ladies do. We buy multiple tests. And sure enough, I took the tests. All of them came back positive. I was so excited. So I got to tell Chris, and we were just over the moon excited. We were excited because it didn't really take us a long time. I mean, a few months. It didn't happen right away, which is natural. But it happened. Here it was. And goodness sakes, we were excited, but we were scared also. And I'm sure other new parents that are young can relate to that. So the doctor that I wanted to be my doctor, I wanted to see, his name was Dr. Rainey. And a dear friend of mine, Cheryl Green, worked at the office at the time. And I knew that's where I wanted to go. That was the physician I wanted to see. She spoke very highly of him. I trust Cheryl completely, so I knew that's where I wanted to go. So off I went. You know, you make the appointment and you go, you do all the initial paperwork in that first appointment, and things are certainly a lot different nowadays than they were then, but you know, they send you for blood work and you get through that first appointment, and then it's just a waiting game, you know, because you know you're pregnant, and there are some symptoms in my body that remind me that I'm pregnant. Like I had some morning sickness, and well, I'm just going to say it. We're all adults here, and if you're not, well, just ask your mom to explain it to you. But often your breasts get extremely sore and tender. And so I could feel that, and I was so tired. Oh my goodness, I was so tired. But we were just so excited that none of that really mattered. So we waited, I think a couple weeks, and they had ordered our first ultrasound. Now, this was an internal ultrasound because I wasn't far enough yet to have the external, like on your stomach ultrasound. Went to it. I was early, but everything looked good. The little heartbeat was there, and there was no reason for concern. Went home, just excited. Couldn't wait to show Chris. At that time, it was just a little different. Things were just different. He couldn't take off work a whole lot, so we saved those days, and I just went by myself. I don't know how to explain it. It was just a touch different. Anyways, you're just waiting and waiting. And it was early at the time, and then a few weeks go by, a few more weeks go by, a few more weeks go by, and then I started bleeding. It takes your breath away when you discover that. It's still, even thinking about it, takes my breath away. And so, of course, I call immediately, and I can't remember exactly if I went in that day or the day after, but they had me come over. I believe I had to wait just a little bit. They wanted me to lay down and rest a little bit, see if it went away. And it didn't go away. Now, it wasn't heavy bleeding. It was more spotting, let's say. So then when I did go to the doctor, he had me go in for lab work. And because, they measure your HCGs. And there's a funny story. I'll tell you about that later, but later in the story. So he had me go first to the lab, get the blood work, and then straight up to get an ultrasound. And I hadn't even seen him. I just had to go in and do those two things. Did the lab work. Went in to have the ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech, they can't tell you any information. And so she was just completely stoic. I mean, no expression at all, which I understand. I understand she had to be. There was no sound, but I thought maybe she just turned it down. I don't know. You just find yourself holding on to any little thread of hope. So she completed the exam. It was like silent, and she finished and she said, "Stay here and I'll go get Dr. Rainey. He'll go over everything with you." Okay. So I did. Now, I was nervous and by myself. And I know people say, "Well, why didn't Chris go with you?" I just had in my mind that nothing was wrong. In hindsight, yes, I wish he would have been with me. But I just had in my mind nothing was wrong. Even though I knew I was bleeding and that wasn't right. And even though I knew I was afraid, but I just wasn't going to entertain the idea of having a miscarriage. I just wasn't going to entertain it. Okay, so Dr. Rainey comes in, and he so gently, and he was very gentle, and explained to me what had happened. By that time, week-wise, I was 12 weeks, but the baby had stopped growing at 8 weeks. And in that time frame between when the baby had stopped growing and when I got to go in to have everything done, there were changes in my body. I became very sick, not just morning sickness. I was very, very sick. There were some other changes. My breasts were not sore anymore. Then there were just some other personal changes that pointed to a possible miscarriage. But again, I was afraid of it, but just not willing to wrap my head around it. And so as he gently told me what to expect from my body, he gently told me my options and what to expect from my body. One option was to give me some sort of medicine that would dissolve basically the baby, what was left of it. Then I would pass it naturally. I could not do that. I could not bring myself to do that. And when he told me that the baby was no longer growing and it didn't have a heartbeat, I was just so gut punched that I just wasn't processing information. All I could think about was, I need to talk to Chris. I need to talk to Chris. So he explained to me the option of taking the medicine, and then it would prompt my body to dissolve the baby and I would pass it naturally, or I can just wait and my body will do it naturally. And then he went over, and that's what I opted for. I said, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And I remember asking him, is there any chance at all? And I remember him trying to gently explain to me that there was no chance that this baby was going to live, but I didn't want to hear that. That was not the answer I wanted to hear. So I remember us talking, and by that time I was crying, just sobbing. But I knew I had to keep it together enough to get in my car and somehow drive myself home. So I listened to him, and he explained to me to go home and give my body a few days, and it would take care of the situation naturally. He then told me things to look for, to be concerned, and when to return to the ER, when to go to the ER if that need would come up. And we talked about a few different things, but I just couldn't take it all in. So I remember, him gently asking, are you okay to drive? Yes, I said. I put on like a brave face, and I was like, yes, I'm fine. I'm fine. And I wasn't fine. I could not believe what was happening. So I got to my car in the parking lot, and I sat there, and I just cried. And I cried out to God, like, God, what is happening? Like, I serve you. I'm saved. Chris is saved. Like, what is happening? Why is this happening? Is there any chance you can stop this from happening? And I just remember crying. And I had to get myself together enough because I had to drive home. It was like a 45 minute drive home. So I drove home, and to be honest, I'm not sure how I drove home, but I did. I went straight into the house and just laid down and cried. I just laid down and cried. And Chris came home from work, and I told him. And I told him what the doctor said. And he cried. But then he held me. He had to comfort me. When I look back at that time, I don't think he had the opportunity to grieve because he had to take care of me. Or if he did, I didn't see it because he was just my pillar of strength. He took such good care of me. So we slept through the night, and the next day he did not go into work. And I believe he called the doctor's office to check everything and get the information, because I couldn't really process all of it. And I couldn't really give him all the information. I don't know, like, if your body and your mind just goes into shock, if it just doesn't hear the bad news, I don't know. But I rested that night, and then so the next day, I said, I got to get out of this house. I can't just sit around and wait for something to happen. Now, I'm going to warn you now that the next bit of this experience is going to be graphic. If you have little ears listening, you need to go ahead and turn it off. If you are pregnant, if you are trying to get pregnant, please don't listen to this episode. And if you've listened this far, stop. Just stop. Don't listen. Okay? I'm going to share what some might refer to as too much information, but I'm going to share it because it's time that we do talk about it. It's time that we talk about both physically and emotionally what goes on when you have a miscarriage. So the next day, as I said, he had called someone and talked to someone, and I knew I had to get out of the house. I could not and would not just sit around and wait for a process to happen that I didn't want to happen. So I said, let's go somewhere. Now, he didn't want to, but there was pretty much no telling me no. We were going to go somewhere. So we did. We went into, at that time, I think it was like Fayetteville or Oak Hill. There was a store there. We went to, and we were just walking around. And honestly, we were just silent all day. I don't even know if we talked on the way down there. I cried, but not sobbing, I call them just a sad cry, and looked out the window. He drove. We were walking around the store, and I could feel that something was happening. Physically, I could feel it. So I went to the bathroom, and I said, we need to go to the hospital. So we weren't too far away from the hospital that the plan was to deliver at, but that was also where my OB was as well. So we go into the ER, and it was busy. I'm wrong. I could feel that. We came home. I don't know why we came all the way home, but we came all the way home, and I laid down because I thought for some reason like it would stop. It didn't stop. And I knew that we needed to be at the hospital. I didn't want to be, but I knew we needed to be. So we went back to the ER, and we went in, and it was busy. It wasn't like packed or slammed, but it was busy. And Chris and I walk up to the receptionist. Now, this part I remember vividly. I wish I could forget it, to be quite honest. Again, this is going to get graphic. Proceed with caution. You've been warned. We walk up, and he talks because I can't. And the receptionist, I understand she was doing her job. I can see her face. I know what sweater she was wearing, a red sweater with a turtleneck that folded down. It was ribbed. I can see her haircut. It was a bob, kind of blondish, grayish like, and it came over, and we explained the situation. She gave us clipboard, to fill out. We did. We took it back up. I could feel things changing. We went back up. Ma'am, we need to get in a room. Like there were things coming out of my body. She said, you will wait. You will wait until it's your turn. Okay. I went in the bathroom, and when I took my pants off to sit down, there was some evidence of a miscarriage in my pants. So as I pulled them down, it fell out into the floor, and then I just started bleeding everywhere. And I was in the bathroom. I just started yelling for Chris. The door was locked. So I went over. Now I'm like scooting around. Blood and huge. I'm going to call it a glob. But y'all, that was our baby. Okay? I know there's lots of opinions, but that was our baby. The remains of our baby. I opened the door. I don't even know if I stuck my head out. I just said, Chris, and he came. And as soon as he saw everything, he just yelled, we need a nurse. We need help. We need a nurse. We need help. And they came from somewhere. Nurses came, and they got a wheelchair and wheeled me. They gave me a blanket to put over me. And the one nurse kind of gathered the remains. They put a blanket over me. My pants are still at my ankles. This is not exaggerated. This is the truth. You can ask Chris anytime. Wheeled me in front of everybody. I mean, I get it. There's no other way to get to the ER. But we had told the receptionist, like, we need to go in. You know, we were pretty adamant. Like, anyways. So, the one nurse wheels me. The other nurse is carrying the remains. I got a blanket over me. I don't know who's seeing what. And I hear the one nurse tell the receptionist, housekeeping is needed in that bathroom. Close it. And we go in, and Chris gets me up on a bed. I'm just bleeding everywhere. I can remember I was a little dizzy. Dr. Rainey came. I mean, it wasn't no time before he was there. And he reviewed what I had passed, and he confirmed that it did appear that that was a miscarriage. However, he needed to do some lab work. He did it. He had to check me, and he did that. And I think by that time, Tara was there, maybe Emily. Honestly, I don't know. I can't remember. And it was determined that I needed a D&C for a few different reasons. And so he was explaining it to me. And I said, no, I can't do it. And when he first explained it to me, he wasn't, now wait a minute here. I think the nurse told me that I wouldn't be put to sleep for it. That I would get maybe a spinal epidural. I'm not sure about that part. But she said you won't be put to sleep. So when he was telling me, I said, I can't lay there awake. I can't do it. Because I know what you're doing. And I know what's happening. I can't lay there awake. And I remember he was so gentle, and he rubbed my shoulder. He said, you will not be awake. I will put you to sleep. And you will not feel anything, and you won't know anything. Okay, and by that time, there was this, I just remember a lot of blood, and I was just sad. And so the next thing I know, I must have went in for the D&C. I mean, obviously. But the next thing I know, I woke up in a recovery room. But I was in recovery, in a room on the labor and delivery unit. Okay? And I remember, like, waking up, and you're just groggy, and your throat hurts, and I was shaking. I just remember looking at Chris, and all we could do was cry. Like, that was it. I wasn't pregnant anymore. And we didn't have a baby. And so many thoughts run through your mind. So many thoughts. Dr. Rainey came in and decided, because I'd lost so much blood, that he thought it was best if I spend the night. And at that point, I didn't really care. I just felt empty. I just felt empty. So we spent the night, and throughout the night, my husband kept changing, like they had a chuck pad under me, and he kept changing it. And there aren't a lot of guys that would do that, but he did. And I was so weak, I couldn't physically, like, lift my bottom up. And he would put his hand under me and lift it up enough to get one out and one back in. Yeah. So the next day came, and I was just numb. I was just numb and empty. And Chris had taken care of telling everyone, I guess, I think, I don't remember, to be honest, but like my parents knew. They came, they were over there when I had to have the D&C. I mean, like, everybody knew. I mean, those closest to us knew. And so then we come home, and I'll never forget. I will never forget getting out of bed. Chris and the nurse steadied me, and I sat down in the wheelchair. And you have to go through the labor and delivery unit to get to the exit doors. And I could hear newborns cry. I could hear mom and dad talking. I mean, I remember this vividly. I'll never forget it. I heard the nurses laughing as they were holding one of the newborns. And it wasn't like a make fun of laugh. It was like a cute laugh. It was something it was doing. And out through the double doors I went, and on down the hallway. And at that point, Chris went and got the car and pulled it around. And I got in the car, and we left. And I just cried the whole way home. I just cried the whole way home. And so we came home. People were checking on me. I don't remember what I said or if I said anything. Some people sent me flowers. It was nice. Like, I remember Trisha Talbot. She lived away. You know, she wasn't here. She sent me some beautiful flowers. Brandy Hamrick, she did as well. Amy was, I think she came over because I think she still lived here, but I remember her presence, her like physical presence. Tara, Emily, you know, my sister, my parents, Chris's family as well. I'm not leaving them out, Chris's family. And I was in November, early November. And so you just start to recover physically, little by little. The bleeding stops eventually. Gosh, I remember the hurt. And I remember, I do not know that anyone told me this or where I heard it, or if I just made the assumption. But I felt like I couldn't grieve because it wasn't, quote unquote, a real baby. Though it had a heartbeat at one time and it passed from my body. I just remember that I wouldn't grieve in front of anyone. I remember being out in public places and people asking me how I was feeling, when the baby was due, and I would have to say, I lost it. And that's what I would say. I lost it. I lost it. And each time I said that, I took more and more guilt on. Like, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? Why can't my body do this? Little did I know that would only get worse. So a few weeks after the miscarriage happened, Chris's sister had a baby, Katie, and in Beckley. And we went to see her, and it was hard. Now, it was the right thing to do, and we didn't want to take away from that celebration. It was beautiful. You know, she was healthy and all was well, and we wanted to celebrate her life. But at the same time, it was hard. It was hard seeing her little bed, you know, that they wheel into the room. It was hard seeing her little bogan, her little toboggan. It was hard because you were wishing so much that was in your near future. But in hindsight, looking back, you're holding both grief and excitement for the new birth celebration. So I remember getting through that visit, and we got back in the car, and I just didn't have anything left in me. I was like, I just want to go to bed. I just want to go to bed. And I was still in college at the time. Had to get an excuse, you know, they put you off for a little bit. And I remember having to turn in that excuse to my professors. And just the look. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So the people I went to school with, I went to a small school, so they knew I was expecting. So when I returned, I had to tell them I wasn't anymore. It's hard to keep doing, So it took a little while, probably a couple months, because we were so loud with the announcement, That was even before, like, social media. That was just word of mouth, We were so excited. So for a couple months after that, it was just telling people, and they meant well. I don't hold any hard feelings against them. They didn't know. It's okay. They didn't know. And so I just spent that time really beating myself up, because I was for sure that it must be my fault. I did something wrong. I didn't protect this baby. Okay, so Dr. Rainey was great. He called, the next few days afterwards. And then, of course, I had to go back in for a few appointments. And as far physically, I recovered well. But mentally, man, it took its toll on me. Emotionally, maybe I should say. And the whole time, Chris and I were faithfully in church. We were growing in our relationship with God. And I can just remember being so hurt and so mad. But I went ahead and went through the motions. And I remember crying out to him numerous times, often in my pillow, like, God, why did this happen? We got to figure out what happened. And so anyways, they did send the baby, the remains, I don't know what to call it. They did send it at that time for test results, or for testing. And I believe it came back. Obviously, there was a developmental issue, but I can't remember what the exacts were, because honestly, from the minute that I found out I was miscarrying, everything's a blur. I really couldn't tell you much. Then a few months went by, and I forget how long we were supposed to wait. I'm going to say 6 months, a year. I don't know. But so we waited, and then eventually started trying again. And one day I had those feelings again. I was like, oh my goodness. And I was very excited. Took the test. Yes, we're good. We're good. And a few weeks went by. I did call, make a doctor's appointment. I can't remember how soon we got in. I don't know. But I do know by the time the doctor's appointment rolled around, I had already started spotting again, got the blood work, and every 24 hours you have to get it to measure the HCGs. And so we did that while bleeding, and they just completely kept going down, down, down. And this baby, my body did expel, I think that they call it, and I didn't have to have a D&C. I bled a lot, but nothing near the first one. I think we made it to maybe 7 weeks. I'm not sure. But this one hit me even harder than the first one. Because then my mind went to, oh my gosh, like there is something wrong with my body. And then I thought I was being punished for something. Because when I was a teenager, I said I didn't want kids. Well, I was a teenager. My gosh. I didn't want to do anything but watch MTV and, hang out with my friends when I was a teenager. But I can remember just thinking, what have I done? What have I done? Why, God? Why? Like, I thought since I was a Christian and Chris and I were serving you, and so I thought we would get to be parents and like we wouldn't have to walk through such a hard time as this. But I thought wrong. But God sustained us through it. Now, things got tough on our marriage. They got tough. I was sad all the time. Sad and mad. I was sad and mad all the time. And again, he couldn't really grieve the way he probably needed to because he was taking care of me. I can't remember. We did tell some people about that pregnancy. Not as many as last time, though. Not as many. So time went on and we went through the same cycle again. But this time, I stayed in the sad, mad cycle for a while. And the hurt of other people getting pregnant, going to baby showers, it just hurt. Anytime, like, maternity clothes, I would see those. Anything. Walk by a car with a baby seat in it, I would cry. I mean, goodness, I was just sad and mad. At my house and on the inside. But on the outside, you can bet I put on the smile and I did what I needed to do, right? So then time went by. You go back for the checkups. So Chris and I go on vacation to Tennessee. We went to Pigeon Forge, but that was before it was quite as big as it is now. But, Dollywood, I don't even think Splash Country was completed yet while we went, when we went. And the whole time, I just didn't feel well, the whole drive there. But I was so excited. It was our first vacation, just the two of us. Oh my goodness, neither one of us had ever been there. We were so excited. So I remember we had discovered, like, happiness again, And what happens is when you are wanting to start a family and you've had losses or delays in getting pregnant, intimacy doesn't become fun anymore. It becomes, when are you ovulating? Why not this month? Maybe this month. It just becomes, it becomes heavy. It becomes all you think about. I mean, I read every book from here to Timbuktu about how to get pregnant, how to keep a pregnancy. I mean, how to prevent a pregnancy loss. I mean, I was consumed with it. Chris couldn't touch me for any other reason than I'm ovulating and let's try to get pregnant. Okay, there was no just a hug or a kiss, nothing of that nature. And then even when you are intimate with your husband, all you're thinking about is this will be the time. This will be the time. Maybe this is the time. Please God, let this be the time I get pregnant. Please God. So that's real romantic, right? But I know a lot of people have been there. So this trip to Tennessee, we planned to try to just get us over this hump, really. And it gave us something to look forward to and be excited about. And we were. Like, I remember kind of feeling that happiness, that anticipation, excitement, on the way down. But physically, I just didn't feel well. I did not feel well. Now, I knew what some of these symptoms were, but I said nothing. I had put Chris through enough. I was hard on him. I was difficult to be around. Nothing that poor fella could do was right. But man, he just loved me through it. He loved me through it, and he prayed for me. That is the truth. We didn't get through that time in our own strength, okay? So we go, and I didn't feel well, but we went out and about, we went to Dollywood. We were like kids. We were pretty much kids. We were still young. I don't know. Early 20s. I'm not sure. But we rode rides, and we just had a blast. Now, it was just a long weekend. It wasn't like a week or anything. Listen, we were broke, okay? I was still in college. So we just had a blast. And I remember on our last night there, I started bleeding. But it was the type of bleeding that came right before miscarriage, not the spotting. It's just different. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just different in color, consistency. It's just different. the cramps started again. I did forget to mention that I had, when you have a miscarriage, for me, when I did, I'm not speaking a blanket statement over everyone. So, just horrible cramps. Like they were period cramps times 10. I mean, it was a lot. And then even with my first one, while I was in the hospital, I forgot after the DNC, I had to have Pitocin to contract my uterus, because of the bleeding and such. But anyway, so I started feeling them and I thought, oh gosh, but maybe this is just a regular period. I tell myself, this is probably just my period. We didn't get pregnant this time. We just didn't get pregnant. And I remember on the ride home, I told Chris, I said, I think I need to probably go to the doctor. I'm having a lot of bleeding, more than period, regular bleeding that you have on your period, right? And so we get home and we're unloading everything. And it was like when we got home, the heaviness just hit us. We had escaped reality for a little bit. Even though while we were there, when you see people like pushing the baby strollers and the baby rides and little kid rides, it still brought it back. But I put everything I had into making this trip fun because we both, especially Chris, just needed a break from reality. So we get home, we unpack through that night, it's intense bleeding. And I refuse to go to the hospital. So the next morning, we call, Dr. Rainey sees us, and I tell him what's going on. I had to he said, we need to take a urine pregnancy test. Okay. We didn't do lab work or anything that time yet. And I took it, and he came back in. And he said, you're pregnant. And I remember getting so mad. And I remember us talking about, I said, yeah, I'm pregnant right now, but for how long? Like 2 days, 2 hours, a week at the longest. Like I knew what my body, by this time, I knew what was taking place in my body. And we did some lab work, and it appeared that, again, my body was expelling everything on its own. I went home, went back just a few days later to make sure. Yeah. So by this time, I was defeated. Gosh, you talk about mad. I was mad at anybody and everybody, at myself, because why couldn't I give Chris a child? Why couldn't I give him a baby? Like, I'm a woman, and that's what my body is supposed to do, is give my husband a baby. Why could I not do that? What had I done? Why is this happening? I just was so hurt. Now, we didn't tell anyone about our third one. I don't think until after it happened. Maybe Emily and Amy and Tara. I can't remember. Honestly, I don't remember, because I was so sad. I was so sad. I was empty. My body was empty. There was no baby in my body. I was so sad. The next few months were hard. I cried at everything that even came close to making you think of a baby. And I can remember at night, I would get so upset because I wanted to see toys. I wanted to hear a baby cry. I wanted dirty diapers. It's like that. I mean, unless you've been through it, that stuff might sound crazy or off the wall, but it's not. I can remember sitting on the couch with Chris. This was a little while after the third one, and just crying and saying, I just want to see a baby blanket laying there, and it belonged to our baby. I just want a car seat. I want to hear our baby cry. I want to smell our baby. I want to see their features. Like, what are we going to do if we can't have a baby? And then I was all consumed by having a baby. It gets intense in a marriage when you're struggling, when your deepest desire is to have kids and your body just can't for whatever reason. It's so sad, it's so confusing. And again, remember, this was over 23 years ago because it's before we had Price, and that's how old he is. Probably 25 years ago, and it was not talked about. I didn't know other people had miscarriages until after I had my first one, and just numerous people would come up, just in conversation. If I was out somewhere, various people would come up to me and share, like, yeah, that happened to me too, that happened to me. And I can remember thinking, why did I not know that this was even a possibility? Why is no one talking about this? And then I just became mad. I was mad a lot, as you can probably catch on, but that anger, that stems from hurt, from sadness. I thought, nobody warned me about this. Now, in hindsight, probably, and especially by the third one, I knew it was a possibility. But then in my mind, I thought, no way. Like, this doesn't happen more than one time, right, God? Like one time I learned my lesson, but then we're going to get pregnant. Well, I was wrong. I was wrong. And I was so sad. I was just so sad. And I felt like, now, I cannot say anyone said this to me. I'm just telling you what I felt like. Now, this was a narrative that I probably put together in my mind from a place of hurt, okay? But I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone because no one understood. I wanted prayer at church, but I just felt like nobody understood. And that wasn't true. That wasn't true. I just felt like I had to be happy and cheery, but it was totally fake because I wasn't happy and cheery, because I wasn't a mom. I wasn't rocking anybody to sleep. I wasn't singing to them and cuddling and snuggling, and I wasn't a mom. And to me, it was even worse that I couldn't make Chris a dad. Oh my goodness. Now, he never made me feel that way, but I took that on. So time went by, and you heal physically, and little by little, we got the green light, like, hey, you can start trying again. I don't want to. I don't want to try again at the expense of suffering a loss again, because it hurts so deeply. And if we try again and we get pregnant, there's no guarantee that I'm not going to miscarry again. And remember, I told you earlier, I kept saying, I lost it. I lost it. I lost it. I took on that weight, that guilt, that shame, that pressure, that I lost it. You know, when you lose something, like when I misplace an earring, I'm the last one to put it down, and I don't remember where I put it down, so I'm the one that lost it. I knew where these babies were, and I was taking care of myself. Honestly, I ate very well. I mean, I took care of myself. But I still lost it. I didn't do enough. Those were the lies that the enemy kept feeding me, and I ran with them. So time went by, and we're just going through the motions of life, and we're trying to debate, do we try again? Do we look into other options? What do we do? And in the meantime, I was still with Dr. Rainey, and he asked me to have some testing done. And after I had that testing done, the plan was then he would make a referral. At that time, everyone went to Morgantown when you were having difficulties, high-risk pregnancies or infertility. That was just where it was 25 years ago. I don't know what it is now. But I remember going in for lab work, and Chris went with me. I have never seen so many vials of blood in my entire life. Like the little cart, I don't know, caddy, whatever you call it. It was like every vial in there was full. And I can remember the lab tech, the gentleman, the phlebotomist, that was taking my blood, he said, "You're not going to have any left." And he kind of chuckled, and I thought, I don't really care. I don't really care if I have any left, buddy. But I didn't say that. I was just like, so you have all that lab work, right? I mean, tons of it. And all of it had to be processed. And again, like I said, it was 25 years ago. It took a while. It wasn't like the next day we had all the results. So it took a little while. And we eventually, everything came back. We went back for the follow-up. And I can remember I was deficient in some areas. And we talked about different options and such. And again, I just remember I couldn't believe this was happening. Like, I could not believe this was happening to me. Like, in my mind, I thought it happened to other people. It doesn't happen to me. Well, that would be incorrect. But anyway, so after the lab work and after the discussion with Dr. Rainey, then we decided to proceed. Okay, we'll go to Morgantown. But we didn't actually, that's just kind of where we got, like, okay, make the referral, fine and dandy. Gosh, it was such a draining, exhausting, emotional roller coaster. It hurt. Those were a hard 2 years. It was sad. And I felt like that people didn't realize it was a true loss. They were like, I remember people saying, well, you were early. Oh, honey, you're young. You can try again. That's our baby in us, in me. And I couldn't just let that go. I could not wrap my head around the thought of, oh, you're just early, just like nonchalantly, like it doesn't matter. It mattered. My first one, I saw the heartbeat, then there wasn't a heartbeat. Those matter. Anyways, that's my experience with pregnancy loss. Now, I have a testimony of how we got Price. It's pretty amazing. But I'm going to save that for another episode, so you'll have to come back. But it's pretty great. After the blood work, and I'll let you in on this little trick, this little secret. We did not go to Morgantown. But we did receive a supernatural move of God. We had an encounter with God that we will never forget. And every time I see him, think about him, every birthday, I'll never forget it. I don't take it for granted. I live a life of being extremely grateful and appreciative to God that I get to have the 3 kids that we have. And yeah, I don't want to get into that part of the testimony because this is about pregnancy loss. And just know, if you have went through it, you are not alone. You are not alone. Your grief is real and it is valid. Reach out to talk to people if you need help. Talk to your doctor. Talk to others that have been there. And just know, you didn't cause it. You aren't bad, and your body's not bad. You are still a woman. And some may chuckle at that statement, but I remember thinking, real women can have a baby. They can carry a baby. Isn't that a crazy thought now? But I thought it then, because your mind just goes so many different directions. And wherever it goes, I guarantee you there are tears with it. So just know that you are valuable as a wife and as a woman. If you carry a child, if you don't carry a child, if you adopt a child, if you give birth to a child, if you choose not to have any children, or if you didn't choose to not have any children but just don't have any, you're still very valuable and you still matter. And if you have suffered a miscarriage, pregnancy loss at any stage in the game, at any point, your grief matters, your hurt is real, and it matters. And I encourage you to keep praying. God can handle it. He can handle your hurt. He can handle your grief. And just know that you are seen, you are loved, and you matter. And that, friends, is part of my story. And I'm glad we took the time to talk about it.